Hello, everybody. Welcome back. In the last video, we explored strategy, the behind-the-scenes work of job targeting and keyword research. And now it's time to roll up our sleeves and then put strategy into action. And then we do that with the second pillar, mechanics. When we talk about mechanics, think about this as the engine of your resume, the part that actually makes it go. Just like your car engine, if things are clunky under the hood or if the wiring is jumbled, it doesn't matter how good the paint job is, you just aren't going to go very far, right? So that's what poor mechanics can do. Great mechanics, on the other hand, help to guide the reader and quickly. They help hiring managers find exactly what they need within seconds. And this is what this video is all about, is making those seconds count. All right. So folks, let's get under the hood. So what do I mean by mechanics? Let's just take a look at I'll share my screen here with you and we'll dive into the PowerPoint, okay? Basically, mechanics is the nuts and bolts that makes your resume work, the structure, the flow, and how easy it is to read, whether by software or by a real person. So if you think back to the metaphor that we used with the engine, if it isn't working properly, even a beautiful vehicle isn't going to run smoothly. And the same thing goes for your resume. And that's why mechanics matter. The pieces that you need to get it right are here, like a clean, clear banner, a strong top 1/3 that hooks the reader quickly, logical, scannable formatting, smart accomplishment bullets. And by that, we mean specific, measurable, action-driven, results-based, and time-bound. And more on that to come, okay? Finally, it's consistency. And these are things like your headings, spacing, punctuation, and verb tenses. Okay, if you start in the past tense, you need to stay in the past tense. If one title is bolded, make sure they all are, okay? These little things matter. They show that you've got an eye for detail, and they leave a polished and professional impression. And when all of those pieces are in place, your resume doesn't just look good, it functions beautifully. It moves easily from like an ATS program into the recruiter's hands and gives you a real shot at making the short list. All righty, we talk about too, passing the under 10-second test, okay? This is something a lot of people don't know. Eye tracking studies show that recruiters focus on the top third of your resume. And if they don't find what they're looking for within like 5 seconds, usually 5 to 10, I guess, we'll give them some grace, they move on. So let's take a look at the top third of our student from the strategy video's completed resume. She did a great job. She got it right. So notice that her name and credentials are at the top, and directly beneath it, she added a tagline that shows her professional identity. It's a short version, basically, of her value proposition, and one that's tied to the work that she desires, right? Telling stories that matter. Simple, right? Also memorable and relevant. She could have perhaps included a logo to polish this all off, but this absolutely works. It's great. She also added her email address and her LinkedIn profile URL, written out and not just the hyperlink. Many recruiters still just print out the resume, and they may not be able to access your LinkedIn profile if they don't have the full URL. She also added a URL to her professional portfolio. Very nice touch, but don't panic if you don't have a portfolio or even a personal website. She could have also added her telephone number, but with most people not answering their phone these days, if they don't recognize the number, not including it is something that recruiters have actually come to accept. She follows the contact banner with the title of the job that she seeks. And in this case, it's one that actually matches the title in the job posting. That if you look at, go down a little bit and look at her professional experience section, you'll see that she worked as an assistant editor during her practicum. And that's something for all of you to bear in mind, because you don't necessarily have to have been an employee, right, in the true sense of the word, and had worked in the job. Things like practicums and volunteer work count too. All righty. So going back up again, looking at the subtitles, again, don't panic if you're unable to match them exactly, but as close as you can, even if it's something like storytelling professional, it works and it's not mistruthful. Most BAPC graduates have, I think, probably told a story or two during their time in the program, right? Alrighty, the next paragraph, she added, an accomplishment-based summary. And I'm going to go into a little bit more a little bit more detail on summaries in just a few minutes. So after her summary, it's followed by her key and most relevant skills. See too that we added her education first, and not because it's highly applicable to the role, but because it's a highly relevant attribute, especially the note about her capstone project, right? Ethical journalism in the age of clickbait, right? That would attract my attention if I was looking for a writer at a newspaper. So, okay, without getting too far into the weeds, though, let's say the job posting does require a BA in communications, but your work experience is your biggest asset, then in that case, lead with your experience. As long as you've added your degree after your name at the top, like she did, Octavia Williams, BAPSI, the recruiter will see that you meet the educational requirements, okay? One last thing before we move on, please, absolutely no headshots, no headshots. You'll see many of the fancy templates out there that have pictures, like people's headshots in them. But in North America, they are simply not done. So don't go there, all righty? Okay, let's talk a little bit more now about writing that dynamite summary. As you saw above, it's a short paragraph that uses keywords from the job posting, but more importantly, it highlights your accomplishments. And instead of saying you're experienced in storytelling, you want to show it, okay? So you want to do that using power words that boost your credibility. So when Olivia and I were fleshing out her summary, we looked at her persona paragraph and the competency matching chart. And between the two of us, we came up with this. Again, power words were used here. These are, known for delivering clean, compelling copy under tight deadlines and adapting quickly in fast-paced environment. Using known for indicates that others give her credit for this ability. Recognized for fostering inclusive, community-rooted narratives, etc. Again, it's credibility, right? Being recognized by others. And the same thing again, recruited to lead high-profile writing projects in academic and nonprofit settings. If you've been recruited by somebody, if you've been asked to do something, then somebody with clout probably knows that you're worthy of the task, okay? All of these things just back up your ability to do a job. Now, the crown here too was her impressive GPA and President's Award. Now, employers know that if you've applied this kind of effort to your studies, chances are that you are going to apply it to all you do in your professional life. So if any of you have that or any other awards, right, relevant awards, I guess I should say, make sure that you include them on your resume. These aren't just buzzwords either, folks. They're credibility builders, like I said. They're proof points, right? The proof points that build trust. All righty. Can you see the 2 pages here? This is actually her complete resume. And if you look at this, can you notice what's not included? No objective statement or any reference to references. Those simply take up valuable space. A recruiter assumes that your objective is to get the job you're applying for. And as for references, make sure you have a list on hand when you enter an interview, but only give it to the interviewer if they ask for it, all right? Okay, so let's talk about format. Hiring managers prefer a layout that they can scan quickly. That's why we used a mixed chronological format for Octavia's resume. It highlights her skills and highest accomplishments in the top 1/3, followed by a reverse chronological description of her professional experiences. Notice too that we added a testimonial right at the very bottom. And if you can do this, it's pure gold. Again, it adds that extra boost of credibility, right? All right. Let's, though, talk about the different types of formats and the pros and cons of each one. There's a functional format. It highlights your skills and responsibilities without a clear timeline. It can be helpful if you are a career changer or has gaps in employment. But that's also the downside, all right? Recruiters might see that as a red flag. And some ATS systems, can't read it very well. The other type format is a pure chronological or reverse chronological format, which is exactly what it sounds like. You record your professional experiences from the most recent to the last, and that's basically how you start off. You might put skills at the bottom. It helps a recruiter find things easily. However, it doesn't necessarily pass, the 10-second list, right? Because they can't see your top values that way right when they first look at it. Okay, so that's why with very few exceptions, I almost always recommend the hybrid format that you see here. And so what are those exceptions? So if a job posting or an employer asks for something differently, all right? And that's pretty much the only time. Okay, so let's take another look at some of the way that jobs, your role description on here. This is what I would call anatomy of an excellent role description. This isn't from Octavia's resume, but it actually was from a real live client of mine, okay? So what we have is the company name, position, and title, and the employment dates, a brief company description. And this is really good if you're applying to a company that's of like size, or perhaps you're trying to make a big impression, maybe moving to a smaller company, but in a role with like higher responsibilities or a higher job title, right? Next, there's a brief description of the person's roles and responsibilities. And here is consultant and subject matter expert on engagement and communication, external and internal marketing, pitches and proposals, and attorney coaching. This just added, the reason that we put this on here was it just added a little bit more SEO to her resume because she was actually applying for a job at another attorney's office, but her work, she was a communications expert there. So, and it also adds context. Gives an employer a bit more of an idea of what you actually did there. But that's not where you stop, all right? It's fine as long as you continue with accomplishment-based SMART statements. And we're going to actually dive into those next. All right. Let's talk about bullet points, because not all bullets are created equal. A lot of resumes list job duties, okay? Things like responsible for managing the social media account or help with onboarding. But honestly, that kind of writing doesn't tell the employer anything about your impact. What we want to see are SMART accomplishment statements. And yes, SMART is an acronym, and it stands for specific, measurable, action-oriented, results-oriented, and time-bound. So instead of saying something like manage social media platforms, you would say increased Instagram engagement by 42% in 3 months through targeted reels and stories. All right, can you see the difference? One shows effort and the other one shows results. All righty. This graphic has a number of examples on it, but this graphic is also in your support materials folder, which you will be looking at in Moodle. So you can download it if you like. So it won't take too much more time going through this. But in the meantime, let's just take a peek at Octavia's her job descriptions. We'll head down to professional experience here. And let's break it down. So yeah, is it specific? You bet it is. Edited and published 18 features. Nails it. Is it measurable? Definitely. 18 articles in 12 weeks. Is it action driven? Yeah. Verbs like edited, reduced, co-produced. Is it results based? Absolutely. Like reducing errors by 40%. And is it time bound? Yeah, you guessed it. Over 12-week practicum. Always, 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 I'm going back up to action driven, always lead with a past tense action verb. And if you can, use numbers to quantify results when if you can, even if it's just approximate, because 10,000 is much different than 1,000, right? So again, it just adds extra context. And one last thing, and this is a bonus, aim for an odd number of bullets, like 3 to 5 maximum. And why is that? Because research shows that our brains are wired to pay attention to odd numbered lists. True. And we tend to remember the first 2 and the last item in a list. So make sure when you're writing out your bullets that you put your strongest accomplishments in the first 2 bullets and in the last one. Okay, guys, and now we're going to be heading on to compatibility, ATS, and a little explanation of what that is. ATS, or applicant tracking systems, they are data aggregators. They're used by employers to reduce the applicant pool and number of resumes they have to go through manually. Essentially, when you apply for a particular position, your application goes into the database where it remains until the employer requests a resume that matches the criteria that they input. And that criteria is the keywords, keyword phrases, other things too, like dates and even character attributes. ATS systems are pesky. And not only that, they can also be very, very picky. Tools like Canva and other graphical templates may look beautiful, may look great, but ATS software, while much improved from what it used to be, for the most part, cannot read them. So how do you test it? If you want to kind of get an idea whether your resume will get through the ATS system, is save it as a text file. So that's a .txt file or in a Google Doc. And if what you see is like a jumbled mess, the ATS won't be able to read it. And that means it won't get to a human. So if you're submitting to a job board, use a clean, simple layout, no graphics, no logos. Save the beautiful PDFs and so on for when you hand them over in person or can attach them to an email. All right. For more on this too, please make sure that you watch my video called Beating the Bots. It's in required readings as well. Alrighty, so kind of like the last thing I'm going to talk about is avoid using first person on your resumes, okay? Resumes aren't written like LinkedIn profiles or bios. So avoid I, me, and my. Yeah, just drop the I, okay? Start with the verb. So instead of I manage a team of 6, just manage a team of 6. Alrighty, folks. So there you have it. Mechanics pillar. So from a strong top third to accomplishment-based language to ATS-friendly structure, you now have the tools to format a resume that works. So remember, strategy gets you in the game and mechanics wins the screen, I guess. So up next, folks, we will be looking at design, how to make your resumes not just readable and strategic, but beautiful without overdoing it. All right. See you soon. Bye now.